The Appalachian Mountains are a geological epic, written in stone and time. From the grand vistas of their highest peaks, they present an undulating sea of forested ridges, a spectacle of serene and ancient majesty. This is the land as a promise, a vast, sweeping panorama of natural beauty that has captured the American imagination for centuries. It speaks of freedom, of solitude, of a world untouched by the clamor of modernity. Yet this expansive beauty is a truth told from a distance. To live in these mountains is to live below the ridgeline, down in the narrow V-shaped valleys the old settlers called hollers. Here, the world shrinks. The sun is a fleeting visitor. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the forest ceases to be a vista. It becomes a wall, a green and silent cage that presses in from all sides. This constant pressure of the landscape shapes the human mind. The same terrain that offers sanctuary from the outside world also functions as a prison. Every crack of a falling branch, every shadow that moves at the edge of the tree line gains significance. It fosters a state of hypervigilance, a deep-seated understanding that the beauty of the land is indifferent and its dangers are immediate. These are among the oldest mountains on Earth. Their peaks, worn down by 500 million years of wind and rain, lack the sharp, dramatic violence of younger ranges. Their of life and a necessary part of the economy. They were hard, pragmatic, and insular people, defined by a fierce, almost belligerent sense of personal honor and an absolute loyalty to their family name or clan. It was a worldview that held a deep suspicion of any outside authority and an ingrained fatalism about the violent nature of the world. After a century in Ulster, facing economic hardship and religious persecution, these people moved again. Between 1717 and 1775, 250,000 Ulster Scots left for the American colonies. They were dissenters and survivors, drawn by the promise of cheap land on the frontier. The colonial authorities directed them to the one place that felt familiar, the mountainous, lawless backcountry of the Appalachian Ridge. They arrived in this new world already equipped with a complete cultural toolkit for survival. They were accustomed to settling disputes with violence. They were hostile to government interference, and they understood how to live self-sufficiently in a harsh, marginal landscape. They settled in the isolated hollows and raised their families, bringing with them the English language, the Presbyterian faith, and something else, a vast and ancient collection of folklore. This folklore was the bedrock of their imagination. It was a body of stories, superstitions, and supernatural beliefs that had been shaped by centuries of life in the violent borderlands. These were tales that explained the unexplainable, that gave form to the constant presence of death, and that mapped the invisible world of spirits, curses, and omens that they believed existed just beyond the veil of human perception. It was this mental and spiritual inheritance that would find such fertile new soil in the deep shadows of the American mountains. The most significant part of that inheritance was the belief in a hidden world, a coexisting reality inhabited by beings of great influence and capricious morality. These were the fair folk. In the harsh world of the borderlands, these entities were regarded with a respect that bordered on terror. They were the good neighbors, a placating title used to avoid attracting their attention. This was a society of beings believed to live in the hills and ancient ruins, operating by their own strange laws. The Fae of this tradition were dangerous and unpredictable beings. They were held responsible for blighted crops, sick livestock, and stolen children. Certain stories also spoke of the Sluagh, the host of the unforgiven dead, who flew through the night sky like a flock of birds, snatching the souls of the dying. To the border folk, the supernatural world was an active and often hostile participant in their daily lives. It demanded a complex etiquette of offerings, wards, and carefully chosen words to navigate safely. This constant awareness of a hidden reality was made possible by the concept of the second sight. This was believed to be an innate, hereditary ability, a form of clairvoyance that allowed certain individuals to see what others could not. A person with the sight could perceive spirits, witness ghostly funeral processions foretelling a future death, or see the spectral fetch of a person who was about to die. The second sight was a respected but feared gift. It made the seer a vital part of the community, an early warning system for supernatural threats. It also isolated them, setting them apart as people who lived with one foot permanently in the world of spirits. This belief provided a legitimate cultural framework for visions, premonitions, and what modern psychology might label as heightened intuition or even psychosis. Complementing this worldview was a dense and practical system of folk magic. This was the machinery of belief in action. It included specific curses to harm an enemy, protective charms woven from rowan twigs to ward a home, and a vast lexicon of omens. A single magpie could foretell sorrow, the cawing of a crow could signal a visitor, and the behavior of the fire on the hearth could predict the fortune of the household for the coming year. This intricate system of belief was a direct product of a precarious existence. In a world without scientific certainty or reliable institutions, these superstitions provided a sense of agency and an explanatory framework for success and failure. They offered a way to influence the seemingly random cruelty of fate. When the Scotch-Irish boarded ships for America, they packed these beliefs alongside their tools and their Bibles. They were bringing a fully formed, supernatural cosmology, ready to be mapped onto a new and even wilder landscape. When the Scotch-Irish pushed into the Appalachian frontier, they entered a landscape that was already spiritually alive. The mountains were the ancestral homeland of the Cherokee Nation, a powerful and sophisticated people with their own ancient and complex cosmology. The settlers arrived with their ghosts and fairies, only to find the woods were already populated by a different pantheon of spirits, monsters, and unseen forces. The Cherokee worldview was fundamentally animistic. They understood the natural world to be intelligent and alive with spirit, in the rivers and mountains, in the animals of the forest, and in the plants used for medicine and poison. This stood in contrast to the more anthropocentric European view, which placed humanity at the center of a divinely created, yet largely inanimate, world. For the Cherokee, the spiritual and the physical were two indivisible aspects of a single reality. The initial interactions between these two cultures were complex, a mixture of conflict, trade, and cautious coexistence. In this space of interaction, their respective folklores began to bleed into one another. This process was accelerated by the discovery of a surprising amount of common ground in their supernatural beliefs. The Cherokee, for example, had their own tales of the Nunehi, a race of spirit people who lived within the mountains, a concept that mirrored the European belief in the fair folk. Both cultures held a deep belief in witchcraft, in the efficacy of curses, and in the ability of certain individuals to shapeshift into animal form. This shared grammar of the supernatural created a fertile ground for syncretism. As settlers learned Cherokee woodcraft and knowledge of the local flora and fauna, they also absorbed the spiritual context that came with that knowledge. A mountain was a source of timber, but it could also be the sacred home of a powerful spirit. This blending, however, was a two-way street that could also lead to darker destinations. The settlers imported Christian framework, with its rigid duality of good and evil, began to reinterpret powerful Cherokee nature spirits as demonic figures. At the same time, the specific and terrifying forms of Cherokee legends provided a new and vivid vocabulary for the settlers' existing fears of the wilderness. Monsters from the Cherokee tradition, like the stone-skinned liver-eater Utlunta, or Spearfinger, and the life-stealing witch, known as the Raven Mocker, resonated with particular power. These were not the vague goblins of a distant Scottish memory. These were horrors that felt native to the new land. They were born of the American soil. It was this fusion, this volatile combination of old-world superstition and new-world mythology, that would ultimately create the unique and terrifying hybrid that is Appalachian folklore. This new, hybrid folklore, born from the collision of cultures, was then subjected to a powerful and prolonged incubation. The fusion of old and new world beliefs was sealed off from outside influence for nearly 150 years. The agent of this isolation was the very topography that gave the region its name. spiritual counselor, all rolled into one. Her knowledge was a complex inheritance, a blend of Cherokee herbal medicine, Scotch-Irish folk remedies, and a pragmatic understanding of the local ecosystem. She knew which roots could break a fever, which leaves could soothe a burn, and which poultices could draw out infection. This practical medicine was completely intertwined with a form of Christian mysticism. The granny woman's healing was accompanied by the recitation of specific Bible verses, often from the Old Testament. She would whisper a verse over a wound as she dressed it, or murmur a psalm while mixing a tincture. This practice imbued the act of healing with divine authority, framing the wild plants of the forest as a secret apothecary created by God and accessible only to the faithful. This same system was also used for divination and protection. A granny woman could supposedly read the future in the grounds of a coffee cup, stop bleeding with a whispered charm, or locate a lost object. She provided the community with a vital sense of order and agency in a world governed by uncertainty. Her authority was respected because it was practical and it produced results, whether through physical healing or psychological comfort. Granny magic represents the ultimate expression of the Appalachian worldview, forged in isolation. It is a syncretic system, born from the blending of cultures. It is deeply pragmatic, concerned with solving the immediate problems of survival. unsettling details begin to emerge. Her movements have an unnatural weight and heaviness. When she stumbles, she strikes the floor with the solid thud of a falling boulder. And if one looks closely at the skin of her hand in the firelight, it has a strange pebble texture, like weathered granite. This is because her entire body, save for her heart and her right hand, is covered in a skin of solid stone. She is impervious to any arrow, spear, or blade. Her stony hide is her armor, but her true weapon is hidden from sight, kept carefully concealed beneath the folds of her shawl. This weapon is her forefinger. According to the legend, the index finger on her right hand is not made of flesh and bone, but is a single, massive spearhead of obsidian. It is as long as a man's forearm and sharpened to a razor's edge. This is the tool for which she is named, and it is the instrument she uses for her hunt. Spearfinger is a solitary predator, and her chosen prey is the human liver. She uses her disguise to gain entry to a home or to lure a child into the woods. In a sudden, shockingly swift movement, the grandmotherly figure reveals her true strength, plunging her stone finger into her victim's abdomen. She then uses the sharpened digit to cut the liver from the body before consuming it. The legend says she could mimic the voice of a family member, calling a child's name from the edge of the woods to draw them out. She could walk through the forest and stamp her feet, causing ripe chestnuts and persimmons to fall from the trees to entice the unwary. She is a monster, perfectly adapted to her environment, a being that uses the promise of kindness and the bounty of the land as the bait for her trap. She is the ultimate expression of the fear that a hidden, deadly thing can wear the face of someone you are conditioned to trust. The specific horror of Spearfinger's predation lies not in her choice of target, but in her choice of disguise. The legend is a deep and chilling exploration of betrayed trust. In Cherokee culture, as in most societies, the figure of the grandmother, the elder matriarch, is a sacred symbol of safety, nourishment, and the continuity of the community itself. they could speak their name aloud at the moment of their spiritual attack. This act would instantly strike the mocker dead, their evil turning back upon themselves. This entire framework, this cosmic drama of the invisible predator and the all-seeing guardian, served a vital social function. It provided a sense of security in a world of deep anxiety. It affirmed that for every form of darkness, there was a corresponding form of protective light. The medicine person was the living embodiment of the community's immune system, the specialist who could identify the internal corruption and fight it on its own terms, preserving the integrity of the social body. The legend of the Raven Mocker, with its invisible battles and hidden witches, is a sophisticated piece of social commentary. It is a resonant allegory for the social strains that can fracture a small, interdependent community from the inside. While Spearfinger represents the external threat of famine or disease, the Raven Mocker gives a face to the internal fear of social decay. At its core, the legend is an exploration of a brutal economic anxiety. In a subsistence society, every individual must contribute to the collective survival. The elderly and the terminally ill, through no fault of their own, represent a drain on finite resources like food, firewood, and the time of their caretakers. This is a terrifying and often unspoken reality for any community living on the margins of survival. The Raven Mocker myth takes this unspoken tension and gives it a monstrous form. It recasts the slow, natural drain of resources as a deliberate, malevolent were the intimate spaces of family life, the hearthside on a long winter night, or the cabin porch during the humid twilight of summer. These were the community's classrooms. Here, the elders, the living libraries of the culture, would pass on the accumulated wisdom of generations. This wisdom was packaged in the form of stories, because a lesson wrapped in a narrative is far more memorable than a simple command. Many of these tales functioned as direct, practical survival guides for the young. A story about a nameless creek hag or a vengeful river spirit that pulls children into the water is a far more effective deterrent than simply saying, "Stay away from the riverbank." The fear instilled by the story becomes an internal guard.